Welcome to Invisible Architecture. I'm Christina DiStefano, luxury real estate advisor and creator of the Emotional ROI method. This podcast explores the psychology of space, design, and luxury real estate, and the unseen emotional and identity-driven forces that shape how we live, buy, and belong. Here we look beyond square footage and market data to understand how homes are experienced emotionally long before decisions are made. Because the most powerful architecture is invisible first. Real estate is often explained through numbers, pricing, inventory, and absorption. But those metrics don't actually explain how decisions are made. Because when you spend enough time inside large-scale developments, you start to notice something. Two buildings with similar fundamentals perform completely differently. Buyers walk into one space and decide almost instantly, and hesitate endlessly in another. Over time, you realize the difference isn't just the product. It's something less visible. Identity, narrative, trust, and perception. This is what I call invisible architecture. So instead of approaching this like a traditional episode, I wanted to walk you through the core ideas I speak about, through the questions I'm most often asked. Because those questions are where the real strategy lives. So these are the questions behind the transactions, and the answers are what actually drive the market. Number one, identity. One of the most common questions is, where do you see the biggest disconnect between how developers think and how buyers decide? The biggest disconnect is this. Developers think in logic. Buyers decide through identity. Developers are solving for pricing, layouts, efficiency, and comps. Buyers are asking something very different. Who am I becoming if I live here? How do I want to live? What does this environment say about me? Luxury buyers don't buy square footage. They buy identity. And when someone buys into a building, they're not just choosing a home. They're choosing alignment with the version of themselves. And that's why luxury real estate isn't about price sensitivity. It's really about identity certainty. Number two is narrative. And this is a very common question. How early in a project should narrative be defined? I think this is actually one of the most important questions because narrative should be defined at the very beginning as a building is conceived. Because narrative isn't a marketing tactic. I mean, we approach luxury real estate like narrative is a marketing tactic. However, it's not. It's direction. Because narrative shapes design decisions, amenity mix, pricing, and most importantly, who the buyer is. And this connects to something I say often. Buildings are brands before they're real estate. Buyers are not comparing units. They're comparing experiences, which is why two buildings with similar specifications can perform completely differently. And that leads to another question. Have you seen projects where branding alone changed performance? Absolutely, because the market doesn't reward the best building. It rewards the clearest story. Number three, the gap. Where do you see the biggest disconnect between developers and buyers? Developers design for vision. Buyers purchase for feeling. And those two things don't always align. This is the biggest gap in real estate, and it's where my work sits. Translating building strategy into market resonance, because most stalled developments are not market problems. They're simply translation problems. Number four, how do you maintain narrative consistency across a sellout? And this is where scale really matters. Selling a luxury home is completely different than selling a development. Selling one property is persuasion, while selling 200 residences is choreography. A sellout isn't a series of transactions. It's a controlled story that unfolds over time. So with that, you need narrative consistency, pacing strategy, buyer segmentation, and emotional momentum. And where most developers struggle is here. It's where do developments lose momentum? They lose it in the middle. Launch energy is strong. The final units sell with urgency. It's the big, shiny new thing, right? We all know that. But the middle requires sustained belief, and belief comes from narrative consistency. So number 5, this is based on emotional ROI. How do you think about emotion versus financial value? So financial ROI creates interest. Obviously, purchasers are attracted to the numbers, but emotional ROI is what creates the commitment. At the luxury level, buyers already have the ability to purchase. It's not about what they can buy. It's more like, should I buy this? It's, will my life feel better here? Does this reflect who I've become? Does this evaluate my experience? And that's what I call emotional ROI. And more, it's becoming the primary decision driver, especially in a market that can purchase essentially anything. The differential is the project or the development that explains a narrative or holds on to a narrative that communicates emotionally to the buyer and shows alignment between either their next chapter or who it is they think they will be when they live or own this residence. So number 6, this is the deeper layer, the identity. What role does identity play in your target buyer? Because identity is central. Most luxury buyers are in a moment of transition, whether it's personal, professional, or lifestyle. And home becomes a reflection of that transition. So they're not just choosing space, they're choosing alignment. Number 7, this is all about trust. What signals make a buyer feel confident enough to commit? So confidence comes from 2 things, alignment and trust. Alignment is, this fits my life, while trust is, this is a safe decision. And trust is built through developer reputation, advisor guidance, and narrative clarity. Without those, even interested buyers hesitate. Now, this is extremely relevant to now, and it's AI plus the advisor shift. Like what does AI mean to being an advisor? How does that impact being a real estate advisor? And how is AI changing buyer expectations? So AI is changing access to information. Most information now is readily available online. And it's not changing, even though it's online, it's not changing how people decide. Because if anything, it's increasing a need for interpretation. Buyers have access to a slew of data that they may not have had in the past. It's very similar in a way. I mean, it's actually, has much more of an impact than when StreetEasy, Trulia, and Zillow went online and the mass public had access to information related to real estate, where in the past it was kind of only accessible through a real estate professional. And so now AI is adding on to that layer, because now it's like we went on StreetEasy and everything became easily accessible to the public. Most people still went through a real estate agent, but now information is so readily available that the role of a real estate agent is rapidly shifting into the role of a true real estate advisor. So, as I mentioned, it's increasing the need for interpretation by that real estate advisor, because now that buyers have more data, It's actually decreases clarity. They have much more information, but that information is actually can either be too much information or it leaves little room for the ability to interpret what that information means, what that data means. And so the real estate advisor becomes that interpreter of the data, of the home, of what their buyer or seller is actually in need of doing to sell and market their home or to purchase a home. Which leads to the final question. What will differentiate advisors in the next decade? And that is the ability to interpret and not just inform. We're moving into a clear divide. There will be transactional agents and luxury advisors. Transactional agents will provide access, but advisors provide judgment. Very similar to, I like to think of this coming from an art background and a gallery background. When you have a person who is an art collector, they consult an advisor. There are advisors within the gallery who can advise on the artist in their artist stable or their roster of artists. And then there are individual art consultants / advisors that families work with, that people work with for generations. Not generations. That would be a long time for a person to live, but through the years is what I'm trying to say. So the real estate advisor would adopt a role such as this. So they're providing their judgment. They're interpreting the psychology. They can help frame decisions and they can translate lifestyle into space. So where an art advisor would understand the collector's motivation, preferences, tastes, if a piece would be a good purchase, if an artist would be someone that would be worthy for them to invest in. As a real estate advisor, you're similarly adopting that role, like that same type of role, where you would interpret, how does your client want to live in this space? How will it support their next chapter? Do you understand buyer psychology? Let's say you're selling a home or you're selling out a project. Do you understand what buyers are looking for? Do you understand the personality or the archetype of this building that you're representing or this home that you're representing and who that speaks to? Do you know how to control the narrative so it speaks to that buyer? You are essentially translating lifestyle into space. Because as information becomes infinite, judgment becomes a luxury. So in closing, luxury real estate is often framed as a transaction. But at the highest level, it's something else entirely. It's alignment. Alignment between a person and a space. Alignment between identity and environment. And alignment between vision and feeling. And when you begin to understand the invisible forces behind those decisions, identity, narrative, and trust, you start to see the market differently. Because luxury buyers aren't just buying homes, they're buying belonging. They're buying alignment. And the most powerful architecture shapes those decisions. And that's the invisible architecture. Thank you for listening to Invisible Architecture. I'm Christina DiStefano, luxury real estate advisor in New York City. New episodes are released twice a month, where we explore the unseen forces shaping how we live, choose, and belong. Until next time, remember, the most powerful architecture is invisible first.